Morning. Morning, man. All right, everybody. So today is April 7th. Damn it, I forgot to check again. Today's April 7th, Monday. Santa Barbara. I'm out here in Santa Barbara, California. Right outside the Superior Court, as a matter of fact. And as you can see, everything's running as normal as usual. And so I'm out here. I'm just gonna be out here for another little bit. Trying to do another extra day of hands off. So I have this little poster here. It says hands off, and I'm basically gonna protest a little bit because I'm not happy with the way the courts are doing things, and so I'm gonna have this set right here. So I'm gonna have it set right there, as you can see. It says hands off. I'm gonna set it there. I'm gonna be out here for a little bit. I feel a lot better with my new surgery. My shoulder works a little bit. Like, it feels like if I just got a flu shot, and it feels that numb pain, that sharp numbing pain in my shoulder. That's what it feels like right now, but it definitely feels a lot better. And so I'm gonna be a little bit more active. And today I'm gonna be out here with my sign. It says hands off. And, basically, I don't want to be cut from my benefits. Like in 2019, I had surgery with Dr. Proctor. I went in for a rotator cuff repair. I came out with the separated AC joint, a separated shoulder, with the winged scapula. And I filed a medical board complaint against Dr. Proctor, and they gave me a new doctor, Dr. Romero, and he was supposed to be my secondary doctor. What he ended up doing is falsifying information and my medical information so that it seemed like I was improving, and that wasn't the case. Dr. Proctor, there's a statute of limitation to where you could sue the doctor. And so what the secondary doctor did is he prolonged my date and my time, my treatment and my diagnosis. He prolonged it, and I got hit with an arrest, for failure to pay child support. But I was suffering through injuries caused by a doctor. And with that being said, I filed a complaint with the public defender right after because, I had evidence. I have all these evidence. I had medical documents, x-rays. I had physician letters. I had the works. I had everything. And I wanted to subpoena the doctors because I was fighting a case, a criminal contempt charge for failure to pay child support. But like I said, the doctor, the surgery is what caused all my injuries, and I wasn't working. I couldn't pay. And so I filed a complaint against the public defender. And what I was told by the city leaders and the representatives was that $12,000 was the max they could do. But recently they just gave themselves $50,000 just to meet the medium, just to be at the average price of the county representatives. And so to me, that's a lot of corruption. That's a lot of tyranny. And, I'm tired of it. They're not only hurting me, they're hurting my daughter, who supposedly they're trying to help out. They're trying to represent. My daughter has seen no funding whatsoever. The county received funding because they put me as an inmate. But like I said, the doctor is the one that caused my separated shoulder, my winged scapula, and my AC joint damage. Just recently, my operation has been was it 3 days from now? It was 3 days ago that I just got out of surgery. My shoulder feels a lot better, but it's been 6 years. 6 years. Had I been white, I'm pretty sure it would have been clear. It would have been done a lot faster, a lot sooner. There is a lot of, I believe there's a lot of racial motivation sometimes, to try to get things done. And, I'm brown skinned, like it took 6 years to get my shoulder repaired. And, I got arrested. The public defender failed me horribly. She didn't want to introduce any evidence. She didn't want to subpoena doctors. What she just ended up doing is she found extra charges. She gave me an extra 20 days in jail. The charges was disobeying court orders and disorderly in court. When all I did was I brought this backpack. It's the same backpack that I brought to trial. I had all my evidence in there, my photos, x-rays, etc. I had the physician's letters. She didn't want to introduce it. The court looked at me like if I was crazy, and they arrested me on the spot. I was forced out of my disability hearing because my disability hearing was set, I believe it was 2 days after my trial, and I had a conference versus the complaint versus the lawsuit versus Dr. Romero at conference to exchange information and documents at this conference with his attorney, and I was forced out of that. And while I was in jail, they took advantage and dismissed my case, and now I owe $9,000 to court and $25,000 to my daughter. And yet they're saying, And supposedly this is for my daughter's best interest. Yeah, she got no funding. I'm getting screwed out of my benefits. I got screwed out of a fair trial. And they lied to me. The representatives lied to me. They said all they can do was $12,500, but as of recently they gave themselves $50,000 raise just to be at the average rate of what all the county representatives are making. And so my next plan is, after this protest, at the next public meeting, I am going to try to address this issue and let them know, how is giving themselves $50,000 more, how is that going to help them help the people? Because they're representing the people. They're not only representing the United States of America, they're representing the people. And if they're denying the people the right to a fair trial, they're denying the people the right to their benefits, to uninsured, disability or, unemployment. And and if they believe lying to them, if the representatives believe lying to the people is in the best interest for everybody, they're wrong. I don't understand how they could lie to me and say that $12,500 is the max that the risk management team of Santa Barbara, that's the max they can do, for a false imprisonment charge, medical neglect, legal neglect, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and obstruction of justice. They're telling me that the max they can do is $12,000 for me, but everybody else is no accountability. The Dr. Romero, Dr. Proctor, Susan Sindelaire, everybody involved that deny me my rights and who failed their duties, they're not going to be accountable, and the max they can do is $12,500. I don't know about that. I think that is corruption. That's tyranny at its highest. And if people are upset with Donald Trump, I'm pretty sure they're going to be upset with the Superior Court of Santa Barbara, the leadership of Santa Barbara, the board of directors, the city leaders, everything. If you're going to be lying to the people, if you feel like it's going to be in the best interest, you're wrong. If you're going to be a representative of the people, there's no reason to lie to the people. If you're going to represent for the people, don't represent for yourself. And there's not going to be any government problems. There's not going to be any demonstrations. Everything's going to go smooth. But when there's corruption and tyranny, this is why there's protests, and this is why I'm out here today. And I'm going to be out here for a little bit. Like I said, I have my poster right there. It says hands off. They didn't want to see my evidence, so, basically it's a perfect spot to put my protest, and I know it's mostly the hands-off protest was mostly about Donald Trump's corruption, but the Santa Barbara leaderships, the Santa Barbara leaders, the public defenders, everybody who's serving the people or representing the people, they need to act on it. They need to show it. They can't just pretend like they're doing this and pay themselves triple, quadruple what the people get. For example, with my injuries 2023 and 2024, I was working DoorDash, but my injuries limited my physical ability to work. I only made $5,000 in 2023. I made $5,000 in 2024, the whole year, and most of these representatives get $5,000 per week. So when the risk management team of Santa Barbara tells me that the most they could do for me is $12,500 for a false imprisonment, for medical neglect, for legal neglect, for putting me in jail, putting me through all this bullshit, and forcing me out of my disability, forcing me out of my lawsuit, giving me a criminal charges, when I'm innocent, that the max they could do is $12,500. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of corruption, and I'm going to be out here, I'm going to try to voice my opinion. I'm going to show everybody that, I had evidence this whole time, and if they're going to deny me the right to claim benefits and deny me the right to a fair trial, don't deny my daughter the right to collect the funding that these corrupt representatives have been collecting, but failing their duties to represent the people. If they're not going to be representing nobody, if they're not going to be doing their duties, don't get paid. Pretty much that simple. If my case revolves around my daughter and the best interest of my daughter, and she's still suffering, living with her mom and her brother in one studio, one bathroom, living area, and I'm living in my sister's kitchen, and everybody else is getting paid $5,000 a week, and all they could do for the people is $12,500. I want to know why, I want to know why it is like this. Is it because I'm brown? Is it because, what's the reason? Was there no evidence? Did I not go through surgery 3 days ago? Did I not just recover through surgery that was done, caused by a doctor in 2019? This is the big issue. If it is, then then why did they lie to me? Why did the risk management team lie to me? And why did they feel like they needed to lie to me just to settle a case? When there's the tricks to the trade, you know the law, but you don't have to use the tricks of the trade. You just, if you want to be honest, use facts. There's honor in that. There's justice behind that. But when you use the tricks of the trade to get it settled, to lie to the person and say, hey, all we can do, take it or leave it, this is what we got, that's bullshit. Then they pay themselves $50,000. That's bullshit. That's corruption, that's tyranny. And I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I'm doing this for my daughter because she does need that funding, and I don't know how she's going to get it when I'm barely recovering now. And the child services can't expect me to now just pick up my pace, Like after 6 years of not working, all of a sudden the doctor fixes me. Now it's my responsibility to just pick up the pace, or I'm going to be held accountable. I'm going to be arrested again, round 2 of arrests for being a father in the United States. Okay, well, where's the representation? Where's the representation for the people? I see the funding where it's going. I'm seeing where you're taking the money from. You're taking it from the people, but how are you representing the people? How are you guys doing your duties? That's the main question I want to know. When I'm gonna go to the board meetings, that's what I'm gonna keep asking. How is paying you guys $50,000 more without public vote? How is that gonna help you guys represent us better? How is that gonna help you guys represent us as a people? How is it gonna make you look? How is that gonna be better for everyone? But yeah, so I'm turning this around, as you guys see who's coming in and out now, because it looks like it's a little bit more active. It looks like there's some representatives coming in, and I hope they do their job, because they did me dirty, and I hope they don't do that to everybody, because if they're doing it based on color, it's gonna be known. And I'm gonna try to get it out there to the people, because this is wrong. I went to the news agencies. They don't want to help. They gave me a bogus email, and whatever. I don't need them to speak about the truth. If they want to do whatever they want to do, they can go ahead and do it. But yeah, like I said, they didn't even go to the protest. I didn't see any Channel 3 news representative at the protest. They were all at the Deltopia, is what I heard. They were out there in Deltopia trying to be within the community of the college students. A bunch of perverts. But, whatever. I don't need Channel 3 news. All I need is the truth, and I'm going to be out here speaking about the truth. So, so help me God, I guess. If they really believe in what they preach in there, if they really do this under oath, under law, the law is under oath, under God. If they really believe in that, then there'll be real justice. There wouldn't be tyranny in the city. But yeah, let me see. I'm gonna be out here. I'm gonna check. This was my evidence. They never wanted to introduce it. I didn't get a fair trial. I didn't get a fair hearing. I was forced out of my disability hearing. I was forced out of my lawsuit because they arrested me because I had a duty to do as a father. But I had a separated shoulder with the winged scapula and an AC joint damage caused by a doctor. What everybody got was off the hook. Everybody else, the doctor, Dr. Proctor, Dr. Romero, Susan Sindelaire, commissioner, everybody who got paid regarding my daughter. Let me give you an example. The commissioner, the public defender, DCSS attorney, the child services managers, and the child services caseworker, they've all been getting paid regarding my daughter's case. My daughter has not once received any funding because I have not been able to afford these payments. $5,000 in 1 year, when these guys get it in 1 week. Come on now. And they get it from the people, and then to deny the people the right to claim benefits, the right to a fair trial, the right to speak up, the right to admit evidence. That's, what is that saying? What is that saying about these representatives? What is it saying about the leader? The protest hands off is because everyone's upset about Donald Trump, because they're saying, they don't want a king. He's doing too much. He's taking too much. But what is Santa Barbara leadership doing? What are the representatives of Santa Barbara doing here? That's too much. $5,000 in one week. I made that in 1 year because I was injured, caused by a doctor, and everybody got off the hook except for me. And if it's because I'm brown, I want to find out what I want to investigate it. Is it because I'm Mexican? Had I been white, would I have gotten a representative? Is that the case around here? I don't know, but all I know is that my daughter has not received funding. We have been cut off from funding assistance, and we've been punished. I believe this is cruel and unusual, but I still need to, I'm gonna have to prove it. And the only way to prove it is to be out here and demonstrate my evidence. even if they don't want to look at it, even if they didn't want to admit it into court, even if nobody wants to look at it, it's evidence, it's out there. And, what they did to me is wrong. It's corruption, and I need it to stop. And the problem with here is that if they just dismiss my case, there's still a big debt that's owed to my daughter. And I can't just forget about it. I can't just move forward and try to catch up on life when the doctors ruined my life. The doctors, the courts, Santa Barbara County, the leaders, everybody ruined my life. So with that being said, that's what I'm going to be talking about the next public meeting. And I'm going to be out here protesting, because this is corruption. We do need a change, and there needs to be representatives for the people in the government. So yes, I'm gonna put this right here. Morning.